You know how some languages, they feel almost ancient, like almost fossilized? Irish might seem like that at first, buried under centuries of history.
Yeah.
But get ready to discover its unexpected energy.
Right.
We're talking about a language with almost 2 million speakers worldwide.
Wow.
It's a testament to its legacy.
Precisely. And it's fascinating how Irish, despite, often being perceived as this language that's fading away, it boasts such a vibrant past, such a vibrant history.
Yeah.
And that energy you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's really rooted in a past that stretches back further than most people realize.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock.
Yeah?
Most of us know, obviously, English took root in Ireland, but paint us a picture of the days before that. What was going on?
So long before English arrived on the scene, the Irish language had already woven itself into the very fabric of the land. In fact, they had their own writing system called Ogham.
Hold on, 4th century?
That's right.
We're talking Roman Empire times. This language has seen it all.
It really has. Imagine ancient stones, right? Etched with these very distinct characters. A testament to a civilization's desire to communicate, to record their stories, their history for generations to come.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
It really paints a vivid picture.
it does.
Now, I'm guessing those stones weren't super practical to mass produce.
Right.
So how did Irish evolve from these early inscriptions?
Well, you're right. Ogham wasn't the most practical for everyday use.
Right.
And so eventually the Latin alphabet, brought over through various religious and cultural exchanges, it became the standard. And that's where it gets really interesting, because even though they adopted a new script, the Irish language, it didn't shy away from its roots. It actually absorbed words from Latin, blending them seamlessly into its own structure.
Now, that's a twist.
It is fascinating.
Give me an example. How did that actually work, this sort of absorption?
Okay, so think of the word bishop, right?
Okay.
In Irish, it's Isvag,
Mm-hmm.
a direct descendant of the Latin episcopus. This fusion of linguistic influences, it speaks volumes about the Irish language's adaptability.
It's like they invited their linguistic neighbors over for tea and ended up incorporating their spices into their favorite recipes.
Exactly.
But I have to ask, we often hear about these distinct Irish dialects. Were those already around, or did they pop up later?
Oh, they were already developing back then.
Oh, wow.
Think of Ireland as this linguistic tapestry, woven from threads of regional variations that stretch back centuries.
Okay.
We're talking about 3 main branches of spoken Irish today:
Yeah.
Connacht, Munster, and Ulster.
Okay.
And each region kind of cultivated its own unique flavor of the language.
So it's not just about a different accent, but also distinct words and phrases they use?
Exactly. For example, imagine trying to say something as simple as weakening.
Okay.
In Connacht Irish, you'd often hear lagachan, whereas Standard Irish uses lagoo. Same idea, but a different texture, different music to the words.
It's like the difference between a fiddle tune from County Clare and a ballad from the streets of Galway.
Yes.
Both undeniably Irish, but with that unique character shining through.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And just to add another layer of intrigue, there was a 4th major dialect, Leinster Irish, which sadly faded away over time.
Oh, wow.
But its remnants, like whispers from the past, they still echo in place names, in historical texts.
Wait, so a whole dialect just vanished?
Unfortunately, it happens.
That's kind of heartbreaking, isn't it? What could cause something like that to happen?
You're right. It is a poignant reminder of how languages evolve, sometimes to the point of disappearing entirely.
Yeah.
The decline of Irish, particularly from the 18th century onward, is a tale woven from many threads.
Right.
It's easy to oversimplify it as just straight-up oppression, but the reality is far more nuanced.
Okay, so let's start untangling this web. What were some of those threads that contributed to this decline? So we're talking about a complex kind of interplay of forces at work here: social, political, maybe even economic.
Absolutely. One major factor was definitely the influence of the Anglo-Irish administration,
Great.
which often, marginalized Irish, especially in official settings. But there's another thread to this story
Okay.
that often catches people off guard,
Okay.
and that's the role of the Catholic Church.
Now, that's not something I would have expected. How did they play a role in the decline of the Irish language?
It's a complex historical situation.
Right.
But in essence, the church at that time, they saw English as the language of social mobility, of opportunity,
Okay.
and they actively encouraged its use among the people.
So Irish speakers were kind of caught in a difficult position, almost forced to choose between their heritage and getting ahead in the world?
In many ways, yes. And then on top of that, you have this wave of emigration that's swept across Ireland.
Right.
Imagine, setting sail for a new life in America or Canada or Australia.
Right.
English, understandably, became the key to navigating these new worlds.
It makes you think about the forces that shape how we speak and what gets lost along the way.
It really does.
But you mentioned earlier that Irish wasn't just some niche language.
Yeah.
On the fringes of society, even in the 19th century.
Absolutely not. It was very much the lifeblood of daily life.
Okay.
Used across all social strata. From bustling markets to courthouses to political gatherings, people from all walks of life lived and breathed the language.
That's remarkable. Knowing that really reshapes my understanding of this whole period.
Yeah.
So if Irish was so interwoven into society, what happened? That the pressures we talked about just become too much?
You're right. Those pressures did take their toll.
Right.
But even as the number of native speakers declined, a truly remarkable movement emerged, determined to breathe new life into Irish.
Okay.
A movement we now know as the Gaelic Revival.
The Gaelic Revival. It sounds like a spark of defiance, a refusal to let a language with such deep roots simply fade away.
Exactly. Imagine the late 19th century, right? A time when cultural identity was being re-examined across the board.
Right.
And people began to kind of push back against assimilation. And this is where the Gaelic League, or Conrad na Gael, steps onto the stage.
So they weren't just grammar enthusiasts huddled in, dusty libraries.
Not at all. They understood that language, it's more than just words on a page, right?
Right.
It's the lifeblood of culture. And so their approach was ingenious.
Okay.
They tapped into the soul of Irish identity.
Okay.
Through traditional music, through folklore, through storytelling. They reignited this sense of pride in their heritage.
It's amazing how, music and stories have this power to connect us to who we are,
Absolutely.
Where we came from.
Powerful.
But I'm curious, what does the Irish language landscape look like today?
Mm.
Are there places where it's still the everyday language, not just something studied in classrooms?
Absolutely. Let's take a journey to the Gaeltacht regions, mainly along the western coast of Ireland, where Irish continues to be the language of daily life. Picture vibrant communities where you'll hear Irish spoken naturally in the streets.
Wow.
You'll see it on shop signs.
Yeah.
You'll experience it woven into the rhythm of everyday life.
It's incredible to think that these cultural strongholds still exist,
Yeah.
keeping the kind of flame of traditional Irish burning bright. But I imagine they face their own set of challenges.
Of course.
In a world that's increasingly dominated by global languages.
You're right. Maintaining fluency among younger generations, especially with the pull of global media,
Right.
economic pressures, it's an ongoing challenge.
Right.
Preserving a language, after all, it's a dynamic process. It's a constant act of renewal.
It highlights that delicate balance between preserving tradition and adapting to the modern world. You mentioned these regions were mainly on the West Coast,
Right.
which implies there's Irish spoken elsewhere in Ireland today, outside these areas.
That's right. And this is where things get really interesting. We're witnessing a resurgence of Irish in urban centers, especially Dublin.
Oh, wow.
It's become cool to speak Irish again.
Wow.
A remarkable turn of events.
Urban Irish revival. Now, that's not something you hear every day.
I know, it's exciting.
Who are these new city-dwelling Irish speakers?
Yeah.
What's driving them to reconnect with the language?
Many of them are what we call Nuakentiari, new speakers,
Wow.
who might not have grown up with Irish in their homes,
Okay.
but they're choosing to learn it, to embrace it.
Wow.
Some are drawn by a desire to, reconnect with their heritage, while others simply enjoy the challenge of mastering a new language.
It's inspiring to see this resurgence of interest.
It is.
To see a language that was once in decline, finding new life in these, unexpected places.
Yeah.
It really speaks volumes about that enduring power of language and cultural identity. But with all these dialects, now a wave of new speakers, I have to wonder, how do you even begin to standardize a language that's constantly evolving? Being reinterpreted. It's like trying to create a single blueprint for a garden. But the garden's always blooming in new and unexpected ways. Is that even possible or even desirable?
It's a question that linguists and language enthusiasts, we grapple with all the time.
Right.
Ireland does have an Acadiana Orfigial,
Okay.
which is, as close as it gets to a standardized form.
Yeah.
But even that's primarily focused on written Irish,
Mm-hmm.
grammar, spelling, that sort of thing.
So like a set of guidelines for those times when you absolutely need everyone on the same page, literally.
Precisely. It's there to provide a common reference point, especially for official documents,
Yeah.
educational materials, things like that. But even Enchiridion acknowledges that there's no single correct way to speak Irish. And that's a good thing, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine if we all spoke with the exact same accent, used the same regional expressions.
Right.
The world would be a far less interesting place.
Exactly. Trying to impose uniformity on something as organic as language,
Yeah.
it would be like, I don't know, trying to make every river flow in a perfectly straight line.
It goes against the very nature of how language works, how it ebbs and flows.
Right.
And that makes me think about those Norcantuari,
Yeah.
the new city-dwelling speakers you mentioned.
Right.
What if their version of Irish starts to develop, shaped by that urban environment,
Right.
evolves into its own distinct dialect?
Now, wouldn't that be fascinating? A Dublin Irish as different from Kinnaird Irish as, say, New York slang is from a Southern drawl.
Exactly.
I love how this deep dive isn't just about looking back, but it's also pondering these mysteries of what's to come.
Isn't that the beauty of languages?
Yeah.
They're living records of the past, but they're also constantly evolving reflections of the present.
Right.
Think about those Gaeltacht regions we discussed, those
Magic.
bastions of traditional Irish.
Right.
What does the future hold for them? Will they continue to hold on to their linguistic heritage, in the face of globalization? Or will they, too, be swept up in this current of change? It makes you appreciate how language isn't just about words and grammar. It's about people, their stories, their connection to a place and a way of life.
Beautifully put. And for a language like Irish, which has weathered its share of storms, that connection to identity is even more profound.
It's been a real eye-opener, this whole deep dive. What's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from today's conversation?
That the Irish language is so much more than a collection of words or some historical relic.
Right.
It's a testament to the resilience of a culture, the passion of its people,
Right.
and that enduring power of language to connect us, across generations.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive has sparked a desire to kind of delve even deeper.
I hope so.
If you're feeling adventurous, why not try listening to recordings of those fascinating Irish dialects, or even try learning a few phrases yourself?
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the surprisingly vibrant world of the Irish language. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.